Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 115 of the Podcana podcast. This week, we're going to be taking a look at 5 brand new deck lists from Fabled. We're also going to be discussing lots of different ink color combinations and general ideas of decks before. It's 2 weeks before it's even out, right? It's been a little bit challenging, I have to say, to be able to display some of these decks to you guys because Dreamborn is like pretty much being updated as we're recording this, but we'll do our best to showcase some of these new decks, which will of course include some of the new cards. But before we jump into it, Moyen, the people are asking, where are you?
Yeah, well, I am on vacation, but I didn't want to miss this episode. I would say although the our builds of the decks, they're like I don't think well, at least I haven't tested them out yet. They're like very much theory and subject to change, but I think it's still very, very interesting to have like a first discussion of what could the meta look like, what could these lists look like, but also like the dynamics between them.
100%, yeah. And I also want to clarify, like, some people might be watching this video expecting some, like, super cool spice, like, brand new cards. You do have to remember, like, there's 33 brand new mechanical cards that have been added to the game, right? So a lot of the cards are older cards and maybe just more cards that are sets 5 to 8 focused. And yes, for example, we've kind of talked about a purple steel within set 5 to 8, a blurple within set 5 to 8, but I think in this week's episode we're really going to try like dive deep into, okay, like what cards should we be playing in these decks for the, initial expected metagame. Okay, Blurple, let's talk about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there has been this thing that we've been talking about the past few weeks of this play pattern of Genie and Elsa, right? And it sounds like, oh, they're going on about this, but I really do think this is a very, very, very key thing that people need to be aware of as it comes up to that turn, especially against Blurple, because it's going to be happening a turn early, right? You're going to be ramping into your Genie and potentially into your Elsa. But one card I just, like, from initially looking at your Blurple list, and I do want to say, like, it will be edited in post, but there is a Dumbo in this list as well, right? So, the Iago, how much value do you find that the Iago has, especially in this early meta? Because I've been seeing some decks already, some purple decks in general, and many of them aren't running this card, or maybe aren't running as many copies, for example. Um, and for me, I feel like maybe that's a slight mistake because a lot of the, I'm not going to say a lot of the ways to deal with Iago or deal with Vanish cards has been removed, but maybe people underestimate, like, oh yeah, they can kind of just deal with this. But what I've loved about looking at most of your purple decks is you kind of have like the max Iago, but not only the max Iago, like the max hypnotic strength or the max way to deal with the opposing Iago. So I feel like you're just ready for that meta, right?
Um, yeah, and like how this will play out precisely, we don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
I think still Iago will be incredibly strong when it isn't unset. And I guess there's like in how the meta plays out, like it could be a lot of steel decks, but even then, it's like that they don't even play that many actions slash songs anymore that can target stuff. Um, so I think Iago will probably be left in the spot where you want to play a lot of Iagos, and you might also be happy to have a decent amount of Iago answers in your deck, as I think like Blurple will probably play a lot of Iagos. I think Purple Steel could play some Iagos. So you want to be prepared for that, but outside of that, I do think Hypnotic Strength really isn't like the worst card to kind of like fix some numbers in other matchups as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Blurple in general is kind of like I think for the next set, it has to be like one pillar of the meta
Mm-hmm.
in terms of I for me it's not like this is impossible to beat, right? I think there's a lot of fast strategies that could go under this. But to me it's really, really difficult to see a deck that goes or like to see a viable deck that is also maybe not terrible against aggressive decks that will compare favorably when it's playing against Purple. I think it has so much card draw. It has like very, very efficient tools to establish tempo on the board and just never one sort of steam. I think like late game Purple will be extremely tough to beat. So then the question is like how good can it fend off aggressive decks. But even if it will be unfavored against aggressive decks, that still means it's very important in like how the meta shapes up.
100%. No, I really agree. And yeah, Blurple really seems to be a deck that if it starts to like the later and later the game goes, they just never run out of fuel, right? Like I feel like
Mhm.
card draw is the biggest thing that so many decks are losing with the rotation, but Blurple just doesn't lose it, right? Like Blurple is pretty
Yeah.
much is the same card draw it's always had. You've still got the Finders, you've still got the Genies, the Sails. Um, One thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's something we discussed previously, is the idea of the 4-drops, right? Because there's a lot of 4-drops in this deck, but that's good
Yes.
because we have 8 different ways to ramp, right? We've got 4 Sail,
Yeah.
4 Tipo. So you've got Genies, the Iagos, the Scrooge, um, you've got the Dumbo, and I mentioned a card, Madam Mim Elephant, right? As this potential, like, this is this 3/7 body that, like, is pretty beefy. And your response to, my suggestion was like, yeah, it could be okay if you have Tipo, but if you have Sail, then that card's not really great. Unless you've specifically, if you've got a 1-drop as well. But all of these other 4-drops within the deck are just
Mhm.
always solid cards when you play them. I think
Yeah.
that's a very fair point from you.
Yeah, I think it also kind of ties into the role of Blurple in the meta,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think you have to be super greedy when building it. I think in the end, maybe you don't even play this many Dumbos, right? This
Mm.
version we've built for now plays 4 Dumbos, which means like it has even more card draw than you'd ever need, but you can ink some of it to like kind of play just enough card draw and play out the rest of the game for tempo. But I think if you can beat Blurple, which you will be able to, but the best way to beat Blurple will be by going under it. And if that's the case, then I think you want to build Blurple in a way where your 4-drop's also good at challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like the elephant's that bad at challenging, but it's like if you don't open Tipo, opening elephant means you have to bounce one of your 1-drops. And your 1-drop's actually quite important in like fending off the storm early game.
Sure. No, I think that's a very, very valid point. I think where Elephant might shine a little bit more is in something like a Purple Steel deck. Now, I'm not too sure. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming you haven't. We can check your Purple Steel deck after this, but I'm assuming you haven't put it in the deck. However, you also have to think about, okay, like bouncing a card. How good is bouncing certain cards now within
Yes.
the decks, right? And I think in Purple Steel, maybe it makes sense a little bit more because you can bounce a dock back to your hand potentially, right? Which would be
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more fuel. You could bounce Pete's, but like repeats maybe not as impactful anymore when there's
Yeah.
there's a lot less actions in the game. But like maybe you could bounce. I know a card you're not too fond of, right? But like you could bounce a Lilo potentially after you've buffed stuff up to buff things later, or maybe you've played the Lilo to buff your other cards. You just want to ink it then, right? Like that's the cool thing of at least
Mm-hmm.
bouncing the card. You could just ink it. So I like
Yeah.
the idea of the card potentially, but I feel like you really have to have some decent cards that also combo with you want to replay. It's like enter the battlefield effect, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a good point where it's like in this Blurple, I think we're so good at drawing cards, um, but all like that we really want to focus the rest on the deck on being high tempo.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the cards that we put into play, we want them to be in play. We
Mm-hmm.
don't really need their on-play effect to be repeated,
Mm-hmm.
at least not in Blurple. But yeah, in Purple Steel, e- even if it's just about bouncing Dock, I think that could be like so much more valuable than most bounce targets in Blurple.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Speaking about Purple Steel, let's move on. Unless if you've any other points, I think my general point for like Blurple is like, yeah, like just people have to be very very aware of the deck because I feel like I've been repeating myself talking about it a lot, but I feel like it will very much be a pillar entering into this new meta. Like
Yeah.
I I can't really see how we would necessarily be wrong about that because the opener just seems so incredibly strong, like we keep talking about. But yeah, I guess any final points on Burple before we move on?
Yeah, I guess just be mindful to have enough 1-drops that can challenge in the deck to play 4-drops that you don't mind challenging.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that, as soon as it gets to the point where like the board's somewhat stable, um, with the tricks of like Bell, Elsa, and the late game of Hades and infinite card draw, like you're pretty much chilling once you get there.
Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit about this Anna before we move on, if that's okay? Because I've seen a lot of people play it within Blurple, but the synergy of it is it's pretty much just it's just really to combo with if you have the else on the board, you can like draw a card, right? Or do you actually find value in the support ability as well?
I think there's some value in the support ability for sure, where it's like maybe it at least just stops something from questing, because otherwise you get like a very good support quest plus challenge in. But then you combined with the Elsa, there's like can be a powerhouse, but it's not like this card's like infinitely better than before. Before it was like kind of on the fringe of being playable,
Mm-hmm.
but before that it was competing against all the other 6 drops, specifically mostly the 6 drop Tamatoa supported by Popsicle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even like the 6 drop Gaston was also like a decent 6 drop you could run before. So I still think that this deck wants to have like some natural follow up to like the early ramp into 4 drop, 5 drop curve.
Mm-hmm.
And just like this is now the best it has available, even if it's not like better than it was before.
Sure, sure. That makes sense. Okay. Moving on to the purple steel deck. I believe you told me this also has a Dumbo in it, right? Like we're looking at older versions of the deck right now, but there will be the fresher version on the screen for you guys.
Yeah, so this was also with the 4 Dumbos. And I guess Purple Steel, this is like one way you can build it. Purple Steel, there's definitely a lot of ways you can build it.
Mm-hmm.
This one tries to utilize the Dumbo as much as it can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it combines it with the cards that are like evasive on your turn. So one is the Happy, the other one is the Genie, which is very, very well statted as like a 3-cost 3/4 evasive on your turn. Um, and so with the Happy and I guess overarching theme is why do we build steel decks? Um, It has the best card draw for aggressive decks, which is
Mm-hmm.
Dock, and
Mm-hmm.
it has the best tempo tool
Mm-hmm.
in like Singing Strength of a Raging Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think those are the main reasons we want to play the deck. And then when we have that, how do we round that out? This one tries to play the Happy and Dock package, combining that with like the 7 Dwarfs Mine, which depending on how good decks are at challenging, or at challenging it quickly, could be better, could be worse. But it seems like a reasonable way to build it, to me. But you could also totally build this like instead of with like Happy, Genie, Mine, Dumbo, just play like some more high questing characters, for example.
Sure, right? Like you
So
can
so
just
like
put like Lawrence's and
yes.
other cards in there instead. Like one interesting shift line that I previously played in Purple Steel back in set 6, which like could actually be pretty impactful now, was the Tinkerbell shift line, right? You've got the 3 cost uh inkable Amethyst evasive card.
Sorry, you cut off for a second.
That's okay. I actually luckily it didn't happen when we were speaking. I'll start again.
Okay.
So yeah, so one of the cards or one of the card combos that could be interesting in Purple Steel now is the 3 cost the the 3 cost Amethyst Tinkerbell with evasive, the 1/3 that quest for 2, which
Mhm.
actually really lines up nicely into the Shift Tink. I think Shift Tink we could see it like kind of making its way back. It was never terrible, right? And I feel like if you've got an evasive 1/3, uh, it should be pretty difficult for your opponent to interact with that. So I think that's another line that's interesting to approach, right? What do you think about
That's definitely valid. I mean, this Genie would have a great stat line against that 1/3.
that? Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely viable. I think there was some other stuff I was looking at, which was like, I think there's like a 2-cost 3/3 quest for 2
Mm-hmm.
that you can only play if you damaged an opposing character this turn.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's it's Nathaniel Flint. It's like the worst version of Smee. Yeah.
yes, it is, but we don't have Smee, and if you combine it with like, so obviously you could play like something like Dump Trucks or Fire the Cannons,
Mm-hmm.
to enable it. But also, I was looking at this Lina Brewing, which is still haunting me from playing sealed.
Okay.
Um, like a 3-cost 1/3 evasive quest for 1,
And just
but it
taps
has
to
like
deal
this,
1 damage, right? I think.
yeah, exert to deal 1. And that I think that card could be okay
Okay.
but like I might like it might be cooking a little bit too much, but
Mm.
I'm just trying to emphasize that for specifically Purple Steel, I think there's a lot of ways you can go about building it.
Sure, yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit
Um,
about the Palace Guard? Because is there any reason why people shouldn't be running a 1-4 if they'd rather play like a 1-3 within purple right now?
you, I mean, I think a 1/4 vanish is much better than a 1/3.
Yep.
I think the it will change breakpoints often enough where I'm okay with it having the vanish keyword for something that costs as little as one.
Mhm.
Um, I think what's really interesting is the role of Captain Hook, or
Mhm.
at least the role that it's being prescribed to
Mhm.
in the new meta, which is kind of people are so scared, and maybe rightfully so, maybe not. People are so scared of Louis,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, that's like Emerald's best tool to fight off against these like high questing daisies
Mhm.
or even Tiana, which is something we'll talk to when we go to the
Mhm.
next deck. And they're like, okay, this Louis might be how we combat that. And the Captain Hook is in a big part, it's a response to the Louis.
Mhm.
As as soon as you have that on the board, if they play a Louis, you get this like one cost that's trading a three cost, or which is like such good tempo. It basically means they can't just play a Louis on three,
Mhm.
and which also makes me really scared to see all these Emerald builds because a lot of them are like, oh, I have Louis, I'm okay against aggro. But as soon as that doesn't work the way you want it to, I see a lot of the Emerald decks struggling to deal with early boards.
Sure.
Um, but because of that, if we say if we think maybe Emerald decks could struggle a little bit, that could mean like, oh, maybe we don't need the Captain Hook as much to fend off this anti-aggro tool of a color that might not be represented as much. Like all of these are like questions that we can't answer yet.
Mhm.
But what we can talk about is, oh, this is this is like kind of Emerald's best tool that they could have, and this is how aggressive steel decks could tech for that efficiently.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I never really thought about that. And like every single Emerald deck I've seen so far has Louis, rightfully so, right? So yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, the Emerald decks also we'll get to a little bit later on. Seems to be, in my opinion, struggling a little bit for their identity of like, do they play Clarabelle? Do they not play Clarabelle? You know, maybe my opponent just plays aggro and my Clarabelle's useless because they have no cards in their hand, they have don'ts in their hand, stuff like this. So, yeah, we'll definitely move into that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, Purple Steel, this version looks pretty interesting. And like you said, I'm just excited for. I'm sure there are so many different ways that people can test stuff and build stuff. Like you said, you can swap um, Lawrence's in and out here, but the particular usage of combining the characters that have evasive on your turn with Dumbo, I do think is pretty cool. I haven't thought of that myself, so I like what
Mhm.
you're thinking there for sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
also, I guess one thing to point out about this deck is
Mm.
right now it doesn't play Pete,
Mhm.
which like I'm not sure if that's what will happen in the end, but I think if Pete like with a lot of these decks, okay, in the steel decks I see like 4 strength sometimes if you fire the cannons.
Mhm.
Um, and in Blurple the actions are like they're not really board related. They're like Finders Keepers, Sail, Hypnotic Strength.
Mhm.
And like playing a 3 cost 3/3, it's not terrible,
Mhm.
but you really want some like to gain very, very considerable upside out of it frequently to make up for it just being a 3/3 because like I could totally see that more often than not I'd rather play a 3/4
Mhm.
with like evasive on my turn than a 3/3, even if it's like it's kind of it's really hard to forget about how good Pete has been in the meta where like you can flood the board and then your opponent's only out is B prep or something and you
Mhm.
play the Pete on the perfect turn to like lock out the game. But
Mhm.
um I could see this as a meta where Pete is played a lot less.
Sure. Yeah. I agree with that for sure. The next deck that we have is your Amber Steel aggro pile, as you like to call it. With the additional cards, which we can't see in front of us, but it would be four of the new one cost Aurora and two of the new Lilo, the three cost Lilo, which we'll talk about a little bit. But I mean, instantly, yeah. When I first saw this deck, I was like, I was honestly a little bit surprised that the Captain Hook is in here. But now, for your previous reasoning, I'm assuming it's the same reason why it's
Yeah,
probably in here, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it's the same reason. It could even be more copies depending on how many Louis there are.
Mhm.
Um, although this deck struggles to deal with Louis less because like it can kind of maybe play the strength with more bodies on the board a little bit easier. But in general, this deck is quite scary,
Mm-hmm.
I think, because it's just very efficient. It has like the most efficient questing one drop in Daisy, and then it's very difficult to trade into
Mm-hmm.
because the Tiana makes it so resilient. And I think especially if you look at like a Tiana behind a Pluto,
Mm-hmm.
like if you didn't have a very, very good early game, I could see it locking you out quite consistently. Um, then there's in this deck, this is quite heavy on the Aurora package.
Mm-hmm.
Aurora being like the inkable one cost 1/2 on quest. Your next princess costs one less.
Princess or queen, but
Um,
I don't believe there are any queens in this deck. Yep.
yeah, princess or queen costs one less. And I'm not sure that card will even be played, but I like there's this package of cards that you can play if you play Aurora. I think this Raya could make it into the deck because then you have like a bunch of 3 drops that you can cheat out by playing them on 2. I think Mulan gets a lot better as like a on the turn where Aurora quests, you can play it for 0.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that also helps with the amount of uninkables because now we play like Calhoun's, Tianas, and Dogs as well. So like both Mulan and Amari can help us filter out our hand in a way where we like get to the first dock more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, I do think that it's possible that it's not efficient enough to like quest Aurora, cheat 1 ink, and then the Aurora gets value traded.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if I'm looking at like turn 2, like turn 1 Aurora, turn 2 Tiana,
Mm-hmm.
um, I still feel like there will be a bunch of situations where that compares unfavorable if you compare it to just going like Daisy, one drop, play
Sure.
the Tiana. Then if
Mm-hmm.
your opponent has good trades into your 1 drops, maybe you delay the quest 1 turn and quest on the turn where like the Tiana quests play like maybe the Pluto bodyguard. I could see how like flooding the board first before developing the Tiana could just be more efficient than trying to get this like princess down a turn earlier.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes sense. Yeah, and there's definitely like counterplay to it as well. Like you mentioned, Louis being one of them. If you can place it on the Tiana, like people do need to remember that there is still the human Sisu within Ruby. But I mean, honestly, it's a similar conversation to have, like you were mentioning with Emerald. Is like honestly don't know how well Ruby's even going to be supported this set. Like it seems like Ruby Sapphire is the only real deck that might be able to have some interesting stuff. Granted, I'm saying this without having tested that much, but
Mhm.
that would be a reason where if this aggro deck is like so prominent, like the Sisu can be a nice answer to it potentially. Do you want to mention the Lilo if that's okay, and also
Sure.
the we had Mr. Arrow in this deck at one stage, right? The 2 cost.
Yes, I mean, like I think if you play the Lilo as like a way to have some combat trick in your deck to like trade up a little bit, then Mr. Arrow gets a lot better. I think Mr. Arrow is already not terrible as a 1/2 cost 1/2 quest for 2.
Mhm.
That's resist 1.
Mhm.
But then like it makes of course a lot more sense with the alien tag and the Lilo that like maybe sometimes you can just use it to trade into a ready character, even if that means your arrow is probably still getting banished in that challenge because
Mhm.
even 2 willpower resist 1, it's like it's not that resilient. Um yeah.
Yeah, I think like another use for this like Lilo package is it's not as prominent in this deck because it's very aggro focused and very focused on questing, but there's an
Mhm.
upcoming blue steel deck that will be showing off. Um, and I'll save the conversation for when we get there. But I think there's some neat interactions with some stuff that you can do with Lilo. Um, but yeah, really
Oh,
cool deck. Go ahead.
yeah. Just like regarding the Ruby conversation, I think like Ruby Steel could be okay as like maybe a little bit more playing to the board into like a shark type deck.
Mhm.
Um, I think Sisu, I will I think I still see it struggling so much because even if Tiana is like a big threat in the meta,
Mhm.
if I then see okay, okay, and this is my first take on the meta. It's like these are the 3 decks that I built for this episode. It's Purple Steel, Amber Steel, Blurple. But except against exactly Amber Steel, Sisu still doesn't look like a great card, and it's uninkable. And it can be like really clunky against the other 2 matchups. So it's kind of tough for me to see Sisu as an answer, even though it's a great answer to Tiana, just because like it will be a very bad card in most matchups.
Yeah,
Nonetheless,
you can't really play this card, especially if it's uninkable in your deck. That's only good against one matchup. It's a different story if it's maybe inkable. You can run a few less copies of it, whatever. But yeah, if it's uninkable, it's a huge deck building cost.
Yeah, especially if you have strength reduction, like if you played in the same deck as Coil, sure, I could see that. But like in a deck that just doesn't play any strength reduction, I have a hard time seeing the small Sisu find play.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so the next deck is actually this blue steel deck. And I'm curious to get your opinion on it because this was made by a content creator called Create. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they reminded me of Harlan Sweet, where they seem to be a blue steel fanatic, where they just build. Here's my before rotation version. Here's my updated V2. Here's my new so they're constantly building, constantly tweaking. And yeah, this build was kind of interesting to me. They've got the Pleakley line in here. They've got Sail, but Sail and Pleakley are kind of the main forms of ramp. They've got the 5-cost Donald Duck to ramp into your 7-cost, like the big Hades. Even potentially playing a Vincenzo, although I think that's a card that might get subbed out depending on like what the breakpoints are and how valuable that card will really be. But one of the interesting things that I thought about with this is there's 3 copies of the new Lilo within this deck, and I feel like this Lilo actually combines quite nicely with just this 3-2 stat line. In this case, it's playing the Cruella de Vil and the Mr. Smee, which are, again, they're cards that are evasive on your turn. And if you wait a little bit, if your opponent, let's say they have an exerted Genie, or for example, let's say they even have an exerted Rhino, suddenly a card like Lilo allows your cards to go up and hit into them. Now, granted, that's not great because you're just trading. But I do think that's quite interesting to think about, especially for the characters that have evasive on their turn. They might be able to deal with genies and some other pesky threats a little bit. Pleakley, also to note, is an alien, so that seems like a pretty interesting alien to give Challenger +2 and be able to challenge ready characters at a certain stage. I don't know how it necessarily fits into the curve, but it's quite interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to break down. There's a lot to digest for this list, but they've kind of labeled this as like a blue steel toolbox deck, where this isn't really necessarily like this is the version we're playing. But I mean, I'm sure you felt previously with blue steel that there were so many different things that you could do with it, right? There's so many different cards you could swap in and out at times depending on the meta. So what's your initial impressions of this? And I guess, I'm sure you could look at this and say, well, this could adapt in many ways depending on the meta. But do you feel like there might be something there with this?
Maybe it's like I being a toolbox is fine. That's I don't have any issue with that. But I'm still trying to look for ways. How does this deck, or how is it set apart? How does it set itself apart from like the other decks in the meta? What can this deck do significantly better than maybe whatever else I could be doing in Lorcana? And I guess the Pleakley Lilo interaction is cool. Like Pleakley, but like again, Pleakley on its own, I don't know how great is it even in this deck. We've talked about Pleakley a lot in previous metas, and basically as long as it's inking a character that didn't have like the greatest on-play value, I think it's somewhat mediocre. And the best on-play value we have here is maybe like the Mulan draw discard. And the Lilo too. I could see I could see those cards struggling on their own, and I'm not sure if their synergy is enough to put them over. The other thing is, okay, maybe this deck is a deck that gets to play Tinkerbell without the shift, but it gets to play like a 6-drop Tinkerbell early. And if we assume that they can't like easily have 5 characters on the board to strength it, we could hope that Tinkerbell, like an early Tinkerbell in the new meta, could potentially like freeze board states enough
Mm-hmm.
to enable us to get to like the bombs of Hades and Vincenzo.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something I see. Um, like personally, I'm still not filled with trust that that's enough to make
Sure.
really push this over the line. But that's kind of how I would evaluate the build.
Yeah, so there was I was speaking with one of my colleagues in work, and he's a big blue steel enjoyer, always has been, and we were talking about maybe some other cards we could potentially include in this. So for me, I felt like maybe this deck like really struggled against the evasives, and even with the the Mr. Smees and the Cruellas, it seems like it could still have a tough time against Genies, Elsas, and that type of stuff. Um, I mean, even against Iago, this doesn't have a clean answer to Iago, so you'd probably have to put a card like that. But two cards I suggested, or rather he suggested, not me, one was, um, oh my, I honestly can't remember the name of the card. It's like something Pounce. It's a 2-cost inkable Sapphire card. That says it's an action. Give chosen character -2 strength, and you can give another character evasive until the start of your next turn. I can,
Yeah,
I can, I
that
can.
was actually.
Go ahead,
Hmm?
go ahead.
No, I was just about to say that was like a very staple card to know
Mm-hmm.
when prepping for like sealed worlds, because it was like one of the common combat tricks to like deal with evasives,
Yep.
but also get some value outside of that. Which is like so funny that if Worlds didn't have sealed as a format, I probably wouldn't have known it exists.
Mm-hmm.
But because Worlds had sealed, I'm like, oh yeah, I know that card.
Yeah, it's called Pouncing Practice, and chosen character gets -2 strength this turn. Chosen character of yours gains evasive this turn. So it acts as something that might be able to deal with an Iago, but then also, um, you could use something to take out a genie potentially if one of your characters has enough strength, and then the genie has no strength itself. The other card, which it made me laugh when they suggested it, but it in theory it could be interesting. I just don't think you have enough pirates for it. But it's the TikTok, the 5-cost inkable 5/6 that gets evasive while you have a pirate character in play, and this card made me laugh, and it also made me reminisce. Moyen, do you remember Cerberus from set 1 in
Yes.
Steel? Just a plain vanilla 5-cost inkable 5/6. That card
Yeah.
was a tank back in set 1, right?
So good. It was like the best five, like one of the best 5-drop bodies that you could just always play, have a 5-cost thing and play, have a huge body and play. So I mean, I guess in terms of like, I don't know, sometimes people always like to think about, okay, power creep in terms of like, oh, this was set 1, this is where we are now. I mean,
Sure.
I'm sure there's other examples where there's more power creep in play, but
Yeah.
like just a 5/6 and now TikTok a 5/6 that's like evasive on your turn if you have a pirate. That seems like a very acceptable level of power creep.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
don't know. I feel like if you can have your TikTok have evasive at least semi regularly, then yeah, it seems like it could be okay, maybe.
yeah. Yeah, I even looked at TikTok because like when I built the purple steel,
Hmm.
I looked at all the cards that are like evasive or evasive on your turn. I was
Hmm.
like,
You looked at
a
TikTok?
TikTok's evasive on your turn sometimes, but that
Yeah.
deck was also kind of lacking the pirates.
If you
I
play
guess it had the,
Nathaniel,
the captain
if you play Nathaniel Flint, right? Whoa, this
here.
2 cost you were talking about. Yeah.
But the 2-cost action, I don't even hate it as much as I thought I would.
Hmm.
Um, as you say, it's like an Jaguar answer, but also there's like great synergy with Tinkerbell, as I think a lot of the time, if you're facing a Tinkerbell that you can't remove, you might go, oh, at least I can exert my evasives, and
Hmm.
then uh still be able to get like a challenge off with Tinkerbell, be able to deal 2 damage.
Hmm.
There's some value in that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, honestly. But yeah, that's Blue Steel. Moving on to our next deck. This was built by Neil and Bradley. This is a version of Green Blue, and yeah, shout out to all the Green Blue players because man, for me at least, this is a tough deck to build. I feel like it's always been a
Mhm.
difficult deck to build, but maybe even more so now because I feel like it lost a lot of its big pieces. Like it lost Muses, it lost like all of its good 4 drops. It lost Muses, it lost How Far I'll Go, it lost Tala. It lost some pretty big pieces. But yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, it's you're definitely right, and it's like if I look at the stack, I think it looks well built for the resources or like the cards pool that it has access to now. But I can't help but feel that all of these cards, or like a lot of these cards, are cards where like before rotation we're like, no, they're just not good enough in comparison to the cards that we could play, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like Kida never really made it into those decks because Tala Muses were like infinitely better. And then I know, okay, there was a lot of people that liked Donald in the list, but I always felt that Donald's value was limited by how good how Fargo is at bridging you to that 7 ink turn.
Mm-hmm.
But now I even I would be playing 3, probably 4 Donald Duck because I'm like, okay, that's the only way how we left to get to 7 ink. Now same with Kida. It's like, no, Kida is not great, but I guess that's how we get to 7 ink a turn earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this deck, okay, it got the Rapunzel that can stop some characters from questing. It got the like, okay, it can still play the John Silver lockout games with Basel, Clarabelle, and Bent. Maybe you have to play Under the Sea now to deal with some bots, but I still like this. This deck is facing exactly the issue that I was talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
which is what if what if Louis doesn't stop the entire early aggression?
Mm-hmm.
What if they either sing strength on it, or maybe like they play the character that can challenge the like a 1-cost character that can challenge Louis? Um, do I just lose to their board then because I won't be in time for my like to be able to sing Under the Sea, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think this particular build, there's a few things that are a little bit tough about it as well. Like, I mean, there's only 4 1 drops, which could be fine, right? But even 3, like, I don't know, like, it's really weird to think about Under the Sea, which we'll also talk about when we briefly discuss the idea of yellow green. Like, I feel like Under the Sea still needs some extra support in order for it to have, like, some decent value. And I'm kind of leaning more towards the stopped chaos in its tracks as a temporary removal card because it's
Mm-hmm.
inkable and it just seems a little bit more flexible with the character strength of 3 rather than 2. Um, but also on the like we talked about the 4 drops, there's only Kita in this deck. If I'm ramping on 2, uh, yeah, I mean I want to be doing probably Louis and I don't know improvise or Louis and Clarabelle, Louis and develop maybe, right? But for this particular build,
I
it
guess
doesn't seem like there's anything that strong to do after your ramp, right?
the best thing that you could hope for outside of Kida would be like Sail plus Louis.
Sure.
That would be very powerful.
Mhm.
But I agree in that the lines you can go for are very limited and they are quite slow.
Mhm.
Um, so and I mean like temporary removal is completely fine in this deck because often
Mhm.
you can like turn that temporary removal into permanent one by like if you ever get to that bend or
If you get to
if you ever
bend,
get
yeah.
to the board state where Rapunzel and John Silver stop everything from questing
Mhm.
while you set up your engines. But if you don't get there, you're often like quickly out of the game, and
Sure.
I would be very scared of that happening too often with this deck.
Mhm. Do you feel like because I know this obviously this version doesn't have bend in it right now. We can see it has like a lot of improvisers and stuff like that. Do you think bend is like a necessity within blue green maybe as like oh it should always kind of be a 1 or 2 of maybe or I mean that's also it's hard to say right like it's like okay would I even play blue green in a very
Mhm.
aggro dominated meta right just without the bend like that's the question you have to answer I guess it's hard.
Yeah. Well, I guess it has less bounce effects because Muses is gone. You
Mhm.
could still play Mother Knows Best
Mhm.
and Bend, but like their value would still be lessened because Mother Knows Best doesn't trigger Muses now because there's no Muses. I still think the deck probably wants
Mhm.
Bend as
Mhm.
part of its win condition, and I think this is a deck that could technically maybe this is one of the few decks that could beat Blurple late game,
Mm.
but I think it would come at the expense of like having awful matchups against a bunch of the aggressive decks. So like I wouldn't really count this like when I still look at Blurple as this deck that doesn't really lose late game because I wouldn't count the matchup against something that has like a very bad matchup spread overall.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Yeah. So we have a few different decks that we're going to be talking about. We don't have specific lists, or maybe I might edit some lists within post. But the first one I want to talk to you, Moyen, about is the idea of yellow-green. As I'm sure many people want to hear my thoughts on if I've been thinking about it or whatever. I saw Artibax recently post like a Circle of Life yellow-green deck, which had some of the like filter cards, and you want to circle into some potentially big, interesting plays. That deck looked interesting. But for me, the biggest thing, and of course, because I was like an Under the Sea believer, I was very, very happy that Under the Sea came back. And yeah, like I was looking to see how can we make an Under the Sea deck work, because if we can make a yellow-green Under the Sea deck work, seems like it would fit pretty well into combating the meta of, if we're fast enough to take out the aggro decks, and then also into Blurple, the idea of Under the Sea has always been pretty good, right? But the biggest thing that the yellow-green decks lost was card draw. And I mean big time. It lost Ariel, it lost Diablo, it lost John, it lost Muses even for the temporary disruption. So my biggest
even for card draw, like Muses as like bouncing your own Ariel or something,
exactly.
I think you've done a million times.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a few different ways that I've been trying to think of going about it. I think it's quite obvious that you still want to play a decent amount of the Singer cards, right? Like I probably still play the 1/4 Ursulas. This the 4-cost linkable Tiana. That's a 1/6. That's Singer 6. That whenever you play a song, you give -1 strength to all of your opponent's characters. However, as if people don't know, that doesn't work with Under the Sea. Whenever you play a song written on a card, how you need to think about it is it's actually, they could word it this way. They could just word it as after you play a song. That's the better way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it would work exactly the same way. It's basically like whenever you play a song, this trigger will go into the bag, but like you can only pull it out of the bag once the song's entirely resolved.
Yes, 100%. But that doesn't mean that like maybe just because that doesn't work we shouldn't play the card, because like you could sing something else. And I've seen a lot of people trying to do builds where like, oh, we still play like, four, well, you never played 4 daisies, 4 chip, right? But like we play the full discard package, we play sudden chill. It's like, okay, am I still playing a discard package if I'm not really getting like good value out of it? Like it's so different when I'm discarding and I'm drawing. That's like such a massive benefit for me. And my biggest issue was just that card draw element. I do think that you can play Heffalumps in the deck. That's going to help out a little bit with card draw. You can play BR Guest, which also helps a little bit to kind of get you to some characters that you need. But I feel overall there seems to be like this setup engine missing. Even losing all of the cards with Ward honestly doesn't feel that bad, because I feel like there's like a lot less kind of general removal within the game besides like Elsa's and stuff. So I'm like, not having the Ward characters doesn't hurt as much. But I feel like if I even get a really good Under the Sea opener, like how am I clawing my way back into the game? What am I doing, right? You know what I mean? Like I've even been thinking of like, okay, maybe I just play some of the Tramp package, because the big Tramp, the 6-cost Tramp, seems like a pretty decent card draw engine. But I feel like there's so many different ideas and so many, maybe it's kind of cooking too much. But the bigger combo that I will say is it's not even the Tiano, like, you play the Tiano, you play a song, and then you do the Under the Sea. I think the way that people need to look at Under the Sea now within yellow-green is, because we've lost Kida, the Lost in the Woods is basically the new Kida, right? Like if you can just for 4 pay the cost for Lost in the Woods, -2 all of your opponent's stuff, and then do Under the Sea, that's like a subpar Kida, right? But it's a massive difference, because Kida leaves this body that quests for 2. You really put on the pressure, right? Whereas, I'm just playing the song and not establishing any threat myself, right? So, I mean, after hearing, my overall thoughts there, like, would you agree that it seems like, while in theory you can still kind of do this Under the Sea stuff, it would need a really good engine to keep the deck going, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't want to well, I feel bad talking about it, but it's like you have the tools to, I mean, you have some tools to like cycle in terms of maybe BR Guest, Heffalumps and Wizards, etc. That might help you get to sing the first Under the Sea. You have the singers that could set that up, even if they're not necessarily warded anymore. I think if you want to sing Under the Sea, you'll get to do it. The problem is, I think you lose a lot of games. You'll just sing Under the Sea, and then they play the next board, and like
Yeah, then
your
what
deck's
do you
still
do?
full
Yeah.
of like stuff that does songs and actions that minus strength
Yeah.
of like uninkable Under the Seas that don't even hit everything that you want to be hitting. And you will be out of cards because like you invested all of these cards into finding this combo, setting up the singers, singing the Under the Sea, and maybe singing Lost in the Woods and Under the Sea or something. I think you need the card draw to be able to build the deck that way. And I think without the card draw, the entire deck kind of falls apart. And it's same with the discard. Discarding the hands is fine, but I feel like you'll be going out of cards quicker than your opponent because like you play some 4-cost character that makes them discard one. They will play some sort of card draw in their deck. Like even mid-rangey, more aggressive decks, I think could maybe outvalue this deck. And with a lot of yellow-green builds that I'm seeing, I feel like they're built as if it's the same deck as before. It's like it's built as if it still had that card draw, but without the card draw.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, but like I could totally see how like as soon as you play like 10 games with one of these lists, you're like, no, this doesn't work. I can't do these things without card draw.
How do you feel like, because we're talking about card draw and stuff, how do you feel like most Emerald decks just have to run Clarabelle now? That's an interesting conversation because, like you said then, right? Maybe Clarabelle, maybe they just dump their hand. Maybe Clarabelle actually works a little bit better within the Under the Sea deck because you can, if you specifically shift Clarabelle and then do like an Under the Sea thing, get some cards back. At least that's a body, right? So
yes,
it's okay.
Yeah, you need bodies. I guess also like if you say okay, Lost in the Woods replaces Kida, it's like you'll just not have enough bodies, and it's important that Kida sometimes was just a 5-cost character that you could play even if you didn't use the on play. I think the Clarabelle about Emerald argument mostly holds true. Like I think if you play Emerald, you might need Clarabelle a lot of the time for card draw, except maybe when you pair it with another color that will supply the card draw.
Like Amethyst, right? Yeah.
If you like pair it with dogs, sure. Or if you pair it with Amethyst and Genies, sure. I think that can work as well in a way where you don't need or want Clarabelles, which maybe bridges us to the next deck that we could talk about, which is green purple.
Sure.
You wanna start or?
No, I mean honestly, green purple. I've been really focused on a lot of the other decks. I've seen some people throwing up green purple brews. I guess while you talk, I can quickly check my phone because I know. I believe their name is Taurus, who used to. We shouted him out a good few episodes ago about his like. This was the guy that was playing red purple when red purple was like dead. But I saw him post a green purple list on Twitter recently. So feel free to start speaking about it, and maybe I can put up the deck for some reference.
Sure. So like I haven't dove deep into green purple, but still I think I would like to hit it from a high point, which is green purple has access to the Amethyst card draw, and it has access to some Emerald efficient early aggressive characters, specifically stuff like Merfolk or also like Pegasus one drop. So like it can still
could be back as well potentially.
Yeah, Banzai could be fine. So like it has access to high questing characters, it has access to evasives, it has access to Amethyst card draw. So it has a lot of the tools. I am very scared of does it have the tools going second? It's like what if you have to play from behind? You don't have Crab anymore, you don't have Fox anymore, and now your deck's full of like Pegasus Merfolks and like Genies, Iagos. I don't think that's enough to fight back from behind. Especially because, okay, so the 3 decks that I currently believe in the most before doing like deeper testing are Blurple, Purple Steel, Amber Steel. And in Blurple, I believe because they can like consistently play the best 4 drops in the game on turn 3 and have like very good card draw. In Purple Steel and Amber Steel, I believe because they can utilize strength and dock the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if like I don't have any of these like big reasons why I would be believing in green purple. I can believe in green purple to win their game on the play, but like in a best of 3, when they lose the die roll, I could see the deck really struggling because they don't have strength. Basically, strength is the big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've sent the deck list over to you if you want to take a look. But there are some interesting things that I think one cool combination maybe is actually the this new 4-cost inkable 2/3 genie with an emerald that says it's evasive 2/3 request for 2. While this character is exerted, your other characters get +2 strength.
Yep.
That's quite interesting for if when you combine that then with Elsa. If you quest with this genie first, you play Elsa. Suddenly, Elsa's challenging for 4, so you don't like. That's actually very interesting because usually we've talked about the purple genie and the purple Elsa. Oh, you use both of them to challenge into a 3/3 evasive or into an opposing purple genie. Whereas with this, you could just quest with the genie, get the lore, and then the Elsa itself can then take out one of the evasive characters. Now the difference is, this genie isn't coming into play and replacing itself. It's a big difference. But
yes,
I do think that this genie fits quite well into an Emerald Amethyst build like that potentially. But yeah, it's the difference is exactly what you said. Is if you're on the play or if you're on the draw, massive difference. Yeah.
And okay, at least this list is giving, it's like at least attempting to give some of the answers to the questions we've just put out, which is, okay, maybe Louis can help. But like, again, we've talked about the risk of overly relying on Louis to deal with their board. Mother Knows Best can definitely help to like, if you just like curve out and at some point your 3-drop sings Mother Knows Best while you develop a little bit behind it. Sure. I guess if you look for a reason to play this deck, it has like the most efficient, not like the biggest amount of efficient Iago answers because you can play both Improvise and Hypnotic Strength. That helps. I guess Rafiki and Volgard are decent at challenging. This deck doesn't even go into Merfolk. It actually tries to be a lot more mid-range, which I appreciate. I think the pull the lever, wrong lever thing, I'm really unsure about. People are like, oh no, but it's like card draw and it's removal and we lack both of those things. Yes, that's true, but it's still kind of a clunky way to have these things be part of your deck in a world where you're not discarding either of them to shift. So I'm still like while they might be fine in this deck, basically I don't think there's anything that like pushes a deck like this over the top.
Sure.
But yeah, this seems like a reasonable approach in a attempt to try and build Emerald Amethyst.
Sure. The next deck I want to talk about is Red Blue. Trying to think of the idea of what could Red Blue potentially be. I've seen some people try to build it in a similar way that, basically the DKP Shark Burn deck was built. And yeah, there are some things we can try and do, right? Like we basically replace the Talas and stuff with Kitas now, and we maybe play a few different types of action cards. One of the action cards I mentioned to you, which I honestly don't know if it's that good, but it's like the Tinkerbell action, which is a 1-cost inkable Ruby card. Break free, deal 1 damage to chosen character of yours. They gain rush and get +1 strength this turn. It's like it doesn't seem great, right? But I think my point was that there's not many ways I feel like to give cards rush immediately, and this card would technically kind of synergize well with Shark. But there is an interesting card I saw, Moyen, when I was researching today, which is, I believe it's the Beagle Boys. It's a red-blue card. It's a 4-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 2. And I believe, I will check this myself as well, I believe that when it quests, it gives a friendly character rush and resist +1. I believe that's what it did. So that got me thinking of like, that could work pretty well with Shark, maybe. I mean, obviously initially people aren't expecting it, blah, 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 blah. As soon as people start to expect it, they probably don't exert their stuff. But I kind of like the idea of giving Shark rush and doing this kind of opener. What do you think about it? Is it it's something that could be cool? Or, I mean, the rest of the deck has to have some good support too, right?
Yeah, no, I think the Beagle Boys itself, they could work with Shark. I
Yeah.
think even if your opponent stops exerting, if you have like at least 6 ink and a Beagle Boys on the board,
Mm-hmm.
if that stops them from exerting and that there's a lot of value in that. But I struggle to see the rest of the deck. I'm like,
Mm.
let's say to deal with early questing characters, what can Ruby Sapphire, what can its game plan be? If it's like ramp on 2, what's the 4 drop that lets it like deal with boards efficiently enough? Because
Beagle Boys are the best we got, right?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the uninkable Scrooge McDuck is kind of
Mm-hmm.
the best you've got.
Mm.
It's like a 5/5 that's
Mm-hmm.
tough to take out and can like trade efficiently, but
Maybe the Raya, because then we can ready stuff. You know, the Raya that when you ink it gets to ready stuff. But the problem is, it's like you need to be playing a one drop. This red blue deck needs to like try to. It wishes it had like a hook or something in red blue, right? That can at least do something in the early game, maybe.
yeah, and it's not even just the 4 drop.
Mm.
I think an at least as big of an issue is usually the way red blue shark stabilized the best was by spamming the Rush Maui
Mm-hmm.
as soon as possible. And like going 2-4-1, 2-4-1, 2-4-1 with Rush Mauis until you've like somewhat stabilized the board, drop down the shark,
Or Rush
Giga
Goofies
stabilize.
as well. They also kind of helped out at times, right?
Sure, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think both the deck will lack quality of 4 drops, but also like the catch-up mechanism of Rush Maui.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the cards to see. Besides Shark, I was like, what are some of the best 5 drops that could follow up with the with the Beagle Boys? And there was like, I don't know if this is even the card's name, but it was like Sir Ebenezer or something that was just like a 5 cost inkable 6/5 that quested for 1. It was basically Maui, but it had a lore instead of Rush. I was like, what this? You know, we talked about power creep, but I feel like Maui was ahead of its time. That card was just
Yeah,
so
for
so
sure.
so strong.
I think in
Um,
general, like the first 2 sets had some cards that were like so much more powerful than
what we even have
what we
now.
got after that.
I agree. But yeah, I mean, it's still interesting that's the thing, right? I feel like honestly, if a version of that red blue deck even doesn't exist, I worry for Ruby in general. Besides maybe some of the Ruby Steel stuff that you said, because I don't know. Again, like actually, I think one of the decks that I don't have on my list to talk about today at least is red purple. So I've seen a lot of people talk about they call it like the ping damage flinger decks, right? Where you do that thing with the 2 cost inkable queen, the 1/4, and then you play the Medusa, you play panics and stuff. That's probably
Mhm.
an interesting build to look at. I haven't looked at too many of them so far. At least, are you familiar with any red purple decks with that type of
Like,
build?
only like from a few weeks ago when
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have all the cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that I mean, when we did have all the cards, it's probably still similar to that build that
Yeah.
we had, right? Um, The next one I want to quickly talk about is the is Ruby Amber, this Racers deck.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a bit of a meme. I don't know. Like I feel like people like to do like this like archetype thing. Like, oh, this archetype's kind of like finally good. But I looked into it a little bit, and I felt like it had something interesting. I still don't know if it's necessarily good, but a big reason why people wanted to play it was because I had this card Candy Drift, which is a Ruby Amber action which gives chosen character +5 strength this turn. You draw a card, but then the character gets banished at the end of the turn. So people are like, oh, this is an answer I have against Rhino. This is a card that I can like trade up and get a card back. But in general, it just plays the whole entire Racer package still, right? And the Racer
Mm-hmm.
package was like, the way I kind of looked at it was there's not a massive amount of card draw on the deck, but a lot of what the Racer package does is getting racers back from the discard. So I kind of tried to look at that as similarly as I could to card draw to see, okay, this is how it's keeping its resources going. And then I was looking at the card quality of each racer, and I'm like, it seems okay. I felt like it really had it would really have a problem against evasive builds. Like it has like the 4 of the 3/1 evasive Vanellope that costs 2. Which by the way, I still really like that stat line within this meta in general. 3/1 evasive seems okay. But I even put like the Pegasus in the deck as well, right? The 3/1 Pegasus,
Yeah.
because I was like, I just really want a lot of evasive. So I was afraid that um the deck didn't really have a great answer into like Blurple decks and stuff. But then even against like normal aggro decks, I don't know. I felt like you had to have things really go your way. What's your
Yeah.
general opinion? I feel like it's just still kind of this like archetype that's just not really there yet.
Yeah, I think there is some cards in that archetype of
Mm,
racers that I think are really, really strong.
mm,
Um, but it's as a whole, I just still don't see it coming together because you'll be forced to play so many cards that like I'd usually not want to put in my deck just because they have the racer attack. I guess just to highlight, I think two cards that I think are
mm-hmm,
incredible.
mm-hmm.
Um, would be one is like the 3-drop Record Valve
Yes,
that
that
says
buffs eraser.
on play, yeah, it's like a 3-cost 4/2
Mm-hmm,
quest for 1 inkable. When you play this character, you can give a racer +4 strength.
mm-hmm,
That's like very comparable to a crab.
mm-hmm,
Not even like a worse crab. That's like
mm-hmm,
just just very comparable to crab.
mm-hmm,
And the other one is like a 4-drop that I could kind of see support the entire archetype quite well, which is like the King Candy
mm-hmm,
dual ink card, 4-cost uninkable 2/2 quest for 2. When one of your racers is banished, each opponent has to choose and banish one of their characters.
mm-hmm,
Um, and if we'd have like an early game that can both contest board but also like be high questing enough that you can just force your opponent to deal with your stuff just by questing.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have ways to punish them with both this 4/2, which is kind of like a crab, but also the 4-drop King Candy to like make it really, really awkward for them to efficiently take any challenges against you. Um, and then okay, yes, it has some nice cards that can like give you back some racers
The
from the
discard.
discard, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like the main thing that it's lacking is like this early game that really forces your opponent to interact with you in the way that you want to be interacted with.
Sure, yeah. I'm just having a look at the Candy quickly as well. It is whenever one of your other racer characters is banished. So that's also a bit weird because you kind of want to not quest with that character so that your opponent doesn't just take that character out. So they're
Yeah,
forced to deal with your other
you kind of want
characters.
like have a good early game, quest out on the turn where you play this. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's most of the decks I wanted to talk about. I guess the only other one was what's on my list here, Amber Sapphire. Right? People are like, oh, is it finally time to play like the princess decks? Right? I've seen a few builds going
Mm-hmm.
around. I haven't tested it at all, so it's probably the deck I'm least knowledgeable about. But if there's any set where it's starting to get close. We had the Beast, which I know we talked about. It's like, maybe the Princess deck, it's okay. The Aurora can suddenly there's a lot of interesting princess characters. You can even shift Aurora. You can obviously do the Tiana that we talked about. Um, you play like the Queen Sensor Core and stuff like this. So that's a potential deck that could be interesting to explore. But overall, yeah, I still agree with you that the main decks that you brought for the episode that you picked out, I feel like are kind of gonna be the meta contenders. Before we wrap the episode up, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the mechanically new cards that we got, and maybe some that you might think have some potential? I know we already mentioned like the Lilo, we mentioned like the Genie, but like the Max Goof, the 3-cost one and the 6-cost shift one. Those are cards that I feel like might have some potential, but maybe not necessarily right now. Right? Maybe as we get more songs, they could become a little bit more powerful.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, the Max Goof kind of cards we've got, they have this potential, but I just don't think we have like the consistently powerful songs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even in Infinity, they could have more applications than like in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, although it's competing against a whole different breed of cards in Infinity
Yeah.
to really
Mm-hmm.
make it into your deck.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the most exciting cards to me are like probably the Dumbo,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not like this incredible put it in every deck card, but like I'm really interested to see like how exactly do you incorporate it into your game plan, what decks can make use of it, and in what matchups can you really afford to play for it.
Sure. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed us talking through many of the decks. This episode might come out a little bit earlier potentially, as you guys can see, Moyen is on vacation and slowly fading into the void. I'll be traveling this week. I'll be going to Gamescom, so if any of you guys are at Gamescom, definitely be sure to say hello to me there. Before we do leave, we have to give a shout out to the Sweden tournament one more time from Malmo Games Week. Both myself and Moyen will be attending. I'll be casting, Moyen will be playing. The last big Set 8 tournament before we go full send into Fabled, and I think it's just going to be a good time, a really nice celebration of the game. It's been a while since I've seen a lot of Lorcana people. It's been a while since I've been to a big Lorcana tournament, honestly. The last time was like UK Games Expo for me. So I'm excited for it, excited to hang out with Moyen, Spessy, everybody. I believe DKP will be there. And yeah, it should be good. Moyen, obviously, I know you won't reveal what you'll be playing, but will you be trying to play something a bit spicy, right? I know that's to an extent that's what you did for the Madrid tournament, right? Like you wanted to play something you at least haven't really played that much in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I would still much prefer playing something new at an event like this, but like I haven't yet decided. It's time to get back to vacation, but I'm looking forward to next week's episode, diving more into like newer decks, and then also to the weekend in Sweden.
For sure, yeah. Well, Moyen, honestly, like, huge shout out to you. Thank you for joining us. I know you took time out of your vacation to do this, but we all greatly appreciate it. The number one thing that you guys can do if you liked this episode of the podcast is leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your local podcast platform. There's a video version of this available over on youtube.com/@PodcanaPodcast. Hit the subscribe while you're there. Twitters are @Moyen_HS and @Kawatech_CG. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next one.